Welcome to Odense Robotics Startup Fund's online talk show, where we explore key topics that help robotic startups succeed. I'm Troels Petersen, Business Development Manager here in the Odense Robotics Startup Fund. We are an incubator that helps early-stage startups within robotics, drones, and automation build and scale their companies. Today's episode is all about market validation and how you as a startup can de-risk your journey by validating your product and understanding your market while you are still in the early phases of development. And remember, this talk show is live, so if you have any questions during this session, please type them in the Q&A chat and we will get back to them as part of the Q&A session in the end. We are joined today by two great guests. First, Michael Wilkens, Executive Advisor at Strategyzer and one of the first adopters of the business model canvas, and Alf Olsen, who is the CEO and founder of O Robotics. So, how do you validate your market? How do you know if your solution actually fits? And what are the pitfalls that you should avoid along the way? Let's dive in. First up, let's welcome Michael Wilkens. Hi, Michael. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Michael, you are an executive advisor at Strategyzer and the earliest adopter of the business model canvas. You work with countless startups and corporates around the world on validating markets and business opportunities. Can we start by you giving us an overview of the methods and the tools that you find most useful for doing this?
Surely. So before I start doing that, I would like to say that I think one thing that is really helpful for innovators and entrepreneurs is that when they have the idea to recognize the fact that they don't know whether it's going to work. They don't know, nobody knows. So they have to see this journey, that they have to search and find out whether that business model is scalable and whether it's repeatable and it's profitable. So seeing that as a journey, I think is the most important thing. And to go on that journey, you need tools, you need processes, you need a skill. And that's what make up a profession. So it's a skill set. And I think that's one of the things that has been, that people have realized over the last 10 years, that we really need those skills as part of the entrepreneurship journey. And so what we've done as Strategyzer is that we published 3 books that are handbooks in innovation, so to speak. And I think any entrepreneur should read those books. The number one that came out in 2010 is the Business Model Generation. And it talks about how you create value in a company. It's actually what are the dynamics of value creation in your company. And it's a great way to do a prototype of the business that you want to create. The second book is what we call Value Proposition Design. It's about how you create value for your customers. How can you make sure that you match the problems of the customers, the pains and the gains, and it's very systematic and operational. And the last book, which I highly recommend, is about how to testing business models. And it lays out 46 different ways of testing business models. We all think that testing is having a conversation, but testing is so much more than that. And that's what you can all look up in this handbook about testing. So with those 3 books, I think you have a very strong framework to start your journey. And if you just jump into the business model canvas, I think many entrepreneurs have seen this before. It's not something you can just do and then leave. It's a dynamic tool. It's a tool that you use as a conversation, as a prototype. So my recommendation is to have it on your desk every single day. And every time you have a learning, you change your business model. And I've never seen a company that ends out with a business model that is started with. So this is something that has to be repeated all the time. Every time you have new learnings, new insights, you change your customer segments, you change your channel, your value proposition, whatever. So it's a lens that you put on your company, and it allows you to have a conversation. Then we use the value proposition canvas. It has 2 sides. You are understanding your customer on the one side, is of the customer profile. And on the other side, how do you design value proposition that match the pains and the gains of the customers? And I like to quote Einstein. He said, if I had a problem I had to solve and my life depended on that problem, I would use 95% of my time understanding the problem, and I would use 5% of my time finding the solution. Because when you really understand, it's so much easier to solve it. And it's actually the same thing when you're creating value proposition. If you spend 95% of your time understanding your customers in detail, their needs, their jobs, the pains and the gains, you will be able to find the solutions in 5% of the time. And I think that is the biggest challenge actually we see, is that especially in technology where you have a lot of engineers, they know how to build stuff. So they like to be on the side where they build stuff and not having conversation with customers. Not engineers in this room, of course, but other engineers. So I brought this slide that shows the journey from an idea to a successful company. And that journey we try to split up in two. First part of the journey we call searching for a repeatable, profitable, scalable business model. And the second one we call execution. And in the search phase, I mean, everybody thinks it's a straight line, but in reality, it's very crooked line. It goes back. You have to start over. You get new insights. So the purpose of the first search phase is only one thing, is to arrive at the scalable business model. And the way to do it is to reduce uncertainty. So uncertainty that the idea is not going to work. And nobody knows whether it's going to work or not. Not Elon Musk, not Jesper Buch, nobody knows. We have data on this, and even the smartest people, they don't hit it better than a monkey does. So it's all about testing the idea. And of course, in the beginning, you do really cheap experiments, like you have a conversation with colleagues, industry experts, then you have a conversation with potential customers. Then maybe you make a drawing or a business model canvas, and you try to describe features, or you have swim lanes that show the processes you can improve. And that's all very, very cheap to do. So you don't need a lot of investments early on. You just need to have those conversations. And then later on, of course, you can build prototypes. You say, okay, this is what it's going to look like. This is what it can do. And then you start investing more heavily. But always making sure that as you decrease the risk, you increase your investment. I see a lot of people, they start by building the entire thing before they have a conversation with customers. And then they spend all their money. So this is also a money game. A lot of entrepreneurs, they loan money, they take up mortgages, they sell their car, they loan money from friends and family. So it's all about not taking financial risk either, so reducing risk. And then, of course, when you come to the point where you know customers want it, they've said so, they even signed agreements maybe, you know you can build it, you understand the technologies, you have the right suppliers, you have the design, you've tested things, you know it's profitable. You know that people are going to pay. You have partners, distributors that are ready to actually sign deals with you. Then you start building for real. That's when you start putting in the work to create a scalable production. That's when you buy a company car and get offices. And so my biggest concern, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they make huge investments way, way too early, as if it's a scalability thing they're going into, where in fact it's all about search. So this is actually the canvas that I like. You have 3 questions you have to answer as an entrepreneur. Is it desirable? Do customers really want it? Can we sell it in those channels? Can we create those relationships? Is it feasible? Are we the right ones to build it, or should somebody else do it? And then if it's viable. And when you can answer those 3 questions with data and certainty, and then you're ready to scale. So that's the end of the first phase of the journey. So that was just a bit of an overview of the approach to it. So it's the business model canvas, it's the value proposition canvas, and it's what we call lean startup.
Thank you. You touched upon this a little bit as well, but in particularly in robotics, maybe a common objection from startups would be that, well, we don't have the product yet, so we cannot fully test it yet. How do you handle, what would you say, or how would you handle objections such as this? Yeah. How can we work around that?
Yeah. So my counter is that you shouldn't build it. Mm-hmm. If you can't explain what it can do for your customers, building it would be a waste of money. I usually say the worst thing you can do to a startup is to give them too much money. Because if they get too much money, they start building stuff. And the second you start building stuff, you're committed. You committed other people, you have loans, so you have to finish building what you started. Mm-hmm. And that can actually be a huge detour in the process. Whereas if you make drawings, you make good descriptions, you make AI-generated videos of what it can do and what it could look like, mm-hmm. and you have that conversation and you find out, oh, actually they want it completely different. then there's no cost in going back. But if you already put $1 million into a product, there's a huge cost going back. So you keep going at something you shouldn't do. So the less money, the less you can build in the beginning, the better.
Yeah. And if we're a little bit beyond that and we have, validation, market validation that requires, I don't know, speed of a robot or precision or kind of like more technical parameters like that, how, still without building or maybe without building a lot, do you have like suggestions for startups who are at that phase? And
two things that I've done before. First of all, is going to look at other solutions. Have they used similar technology to achieve the same results? Mm-hmm. If they have, it can be done. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first one. And the second one is if you have very central elements that needs to be true, we call it hypothesis, that it has to achieve that speed or whatever, then you test only that. You focus only on that. Not building the entire thing, just on the thing that you think is the most important to make this happen. And remember, I'm talking about early validation here. And the reason I'm doing this is actually because I want to save time and money. So it's all about saving time and money so that we can move on to the next project if this doesn't work. Or we can pivot the idea because maybe the idea is good. It just has to be done in a different way with a different technology.
And maybe we can also touch a little bit upon how do you then validate if your data you collected is actually valid, if the data itself is correct. I think sometimes we can experience that potential clients make or have opinions about the product that you are building, and they can either sometimes be way too negative, or also we experience often, I think, that potential clients will give way too positive reviews of this potential new product and claim that it can do things that when they get the product in the end that they don't need or that wasn't actually real.
Yeah.
How do you validate?
I mean, there are two issues. A very good question. There are two issues. First issue is that a lot of people do a lot of analysis behind the computer, desk research, and they confuse analysis with experimentation. Mm-hmm. It's two different worlds. Analysis, one thing is about market big enough and stuff like, but experimentation is actually what matters. But when you go into experimentation, there's a huge bias. Nobody wants to kill your idea. Nobody wants to tell you to your face, your baby is ugly. It's not going to work, because we are fundamentally very nice people. So I think, first of all, you can collect insights in the early phases, and that's where interviews work well. But then you have to start seeing how do people act. So we have, in this book about testing, we have a very small chapter on collecting insights, a big chapter on actually see how people react and act. And that means that you put it out there and say, okay, how many people are going to sign up to buy it? It's not for sale, it's not created, but it's just a mock-up. Mm-hmm. You say how many people are going to buy it if they offered it, and how many are buy it at different price points and stuff. So you test things that don't exist. Mm-hmm. This has been done for many years very successfully. We do it in fashion a lot. We do it in pharma, where we test products that don't exist and see what are the true reactions of people, not only what they are saying. So I think we have to understand that interviews and direct dialogue is very good for understanding and for quality data, but then you have to go and get other data like call to action data, where you have to find out whether it works and whether people are going to buy at certain price points. Mm-hmm. And that's where technology and especially AI helps a lot.
Yeah. And AI is, useful. Of course, in robotics, we can use it in our products as well, but maybe you can also expand upon how can we use AI in market validation?
So I brought a couple of slides with me. So if I can just how can you accelerate the innovation journey? And we can see that already now. The innovation journey has been accelerated from years to months now because we can collect data much quicker, also data about people. And actually we created an application around the business model canvas where you can actually generate ideas for new... so you go in and you create a customer, and then based on that customer, it generates ideas on what to sell to them, how to sell to them, at what price points, and so on. So you can use AI to do that. We can also have AI evaluate your business model and tell you how good it is and where it's weak. Yeah. And tell you, okay, I think you should focus more on how you can have a closer relationship to the customers by subscriptions, or you should focus more on co-development with your customers to tie them in closer, or maybe your profitability is not high enough. The AI will give you a rating and give you suggestions on how to improve your business models, which is pretty crazy. And we can see the creativity of AI just beat humans by factor 10. So we've done this in creating new products for companies like Nestlé, and it's just a different world what it offers. So here's an example of AI just suggesting new revenue streams. AI generates customer segments. So we say, okay, this is our target customers. Please go out and find similar target customers and tell them what are their jobs to be done in this context, what are the pains and the gains, and they actually do the work for us. And of course, this is AI, so you have to go out and you have to validate it against real customers. And we have AI supported software that does that too. So you have conversations, and together with customers, you validate if that profile is true. So the speed with which innovation happens, AI is changing gears right now, and it's really interesting times. I would love to be an entrepreneur, 25 years old, starting a brand new company right now. It's fascinating times.
Yeah, and the AI powered tool that you presented here, can you maybe just elaborate a little bit? How was that built? Did you insert successful business model or failed business model, or in a
So actually, what we did is when ChatGPT came out very, very early, I started using it as preparation for my workshops. Say, okay, if I have this industry, if I have this business model, what could I suggest so that I seem smarter than I was? So, and people would be suspicious and said, how could you know this much about our company and our industry? And they said, I have a friend. Yeah. And I showed them this application, and I could see they would love to use it, but it was not very user-friendly. So we created a visual interface. And what we do is actually we scout all the data that we have ourselves in Strategyzer about our tools, but then we have 5 LLMs working together, right, to scout the information on the internet, and they go through a circle of discussions and come up with the best ideas. So in the beginning, we just used ChatGPT, but we found out the results were too monotonous. They looked like each other every time, because every time we accepted, it said, okay, you like that type of information, I'll give you the same next time. But using several LLMs working together to find solutions is just amazing what we see in terms of results.
Yeah. So. Well, thank you a lot, Michael. Very, very interesting. Stick around, because we would like to bring you back for question and answers. But first, we will listen to the story from Alf. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's welcome our second guest, Alf Olsen, founder and CEO of Odense Robotics. Welcome, Alf. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, welcome. Alf, Odense Robotics is developing the AMR sweeper, and you've been working systematically with market validation, I know, even from the early stages. Could we start by you just briefly explaining your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So the origin story is actually from my own background. I had a patio completely infested with dandelions, and I had a robotic lawnmower and a robotic vacuum cleaner. So I figured, why couldn't I just get a robotic patio cleaner? But no one had made that, so I figured, it's a fun hobby, I'll just develop that. And then it's a hobby that grew and grew. Then I always knew there was some sort of business potential in it. So when I founded the company, the first thing I did was to actually join Odense Robotics and learn that I'd been doing everything wrong. So I pivoted the company towards a professional market, and then I was working up a way to actually go full-time into it. Then luck would have it, beginning of 2024, I actually managed to get a chance to go full-time into it. And started developing, and at the same time we're actually looking into, okay, who would be the potential customers of this, some sort of professional segments, but there are multiple of those. It could be, of course, municipalities, but it could also be any kind of business parks or hotel chains or theme parks. So what we actually did was try to categorize these customer segments, and then we're reaching out to each individual segment And we could see by the number of responses, we could actually measure how interested they were in this. And we could see something like camping sites, they didn't have a significant interest in this, but specifically theme parks and zoos, they were really, really keen on it. And we could then have a prototype that we actually put in my own truck, trunk, and then went to them. It was literally just a 3D printed version where the brushes were tied to it. It could do nothing. It was just an empty shell other than being in the car and have a conversation around it. But that was plenty sufficient, because then as I visited, multiple sites, I could see their interest in it. I could hear what kind of issues they were having, and we actually discovered that there were a lot of other applications that the same tool would be able to do with various integrations to it. But that of course also means that it's when you really just want to build a lot of things, you really have to restrain yourself. So we came up with some fairly clever design choices where we know that there are features to develop in the future, but we're not developing them right now.
Maybe because that segmentation is really, really interesting, I think, and ties well with also what Mike told us. But maybe we should also dig a little bit into the specific product. Can you give an introduction? We saw also a video with some earlier versions. But maybe we should hear what it actually does.
Yes, so it is basically like a robotic lawnmower, but it's for the patios, it's for the pavements, it's for all the hard surfaces, if you will. So it's very, very simply said, it's just a robotic brush or a robotic broom. The thing that most people don't realize is that you can actually stress away any kind of vegetation by simply just having enough activity. So if you sweep every single day, then that is actually sufficient to clear away your patio. Now, of course, patios is private territory, whereas professional, that's probably more plazas. It could be, parking lots, or it could be still driveways, or it could be pathways or bicycle lanes. So basically, it is simply just sweeping, and by sweeping, we can do the various leaves. It could be dandelions, as my example, or any type of weeds. Of course, be moss and algae. But one of the features we are really, really keen on developing is also a trash collector module. So that's why it's designed with this void, this cavity underneath it, to actually have a way to collect. That could be cigarette butts, or it could be chewing tobaccos. I lost a dog to that, so I have a vendetta against getting all of those out of our society.
Yeah. So it works a little bit like a robotic lawnmower, we could say, but it operates on paved areas, and it takes away trash, as you said, but also any vegetation that you don't want in those paved areas.
Yes, exactly. But one key feature we could see also from our engagement with the customers is that the classical technology for robotic lawnmowers with the boundary wire, that would never work, because no one would ever want to break up their pavement to actually install a wire. So it had to be a different technology. But fortunately, that technology is also evolving. So we're using satellite navigation to a large extent. But we are in a tricky area. We could also see that whenever we visited any kind of location, it would be tricky with reflected signals and non-line of sight for the signal satellites. So we had to rely on other technologies. So it's really keen on looking into what kind of technology is actually coming of age for us to employ, and that's how we have developed the product as it is now.
And this combination of technology and segmentation was that something you specifically interviewed for? Like, for example, this wire?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, what kind of obstacles would we actually meet at the various locations, and how would we have a robot to handle these kind of edge cases? And it's actually, the paved area is really, really, really tricky. There's so many edge cases that it's actually to a borderline impossible to develop something in the lab that just works out of the box. So what we actually devised is a strategy where we can cover the majority of the areas autonomously, but then we can also remote control the robot around tricky areas. So if there is a case with a grade where the robot often gets stuck, then we can actually remote control the robot around that grade, or it could be table set that is really tricky to navigate around. As we develop the algorithms to actually navigate around that, we can solve the issues and solve the problems with the customers without the customers even knowing that we are actually manually remote controlling it from online.
you, as we can hear, you did a lot of early phase de-risking, but is there something in this validation process that you would do differently if you were to do it again today?
It's actually really, really difficult to say because there's so many choices, and you don't really know if one panned out the other way, would that have been better or worse? Who knows what's good or bad? I would say one of the things that I don't like about the startup life is that it is so much focused on actually securing funds instead of actually getting the product out to the customers. So I would love to just have a lot of money from the beginning, but I also know that then I would just build a lot of things and get distracted instead of having the actual dialogue with the customers. I think the interaction with the customers and really keep on having that as a focus is probably what I would do more of.
Mm-hmm. And you are a little bit further along now from when you started out, and you have this product now. And I know that you are still thinking about market validation or proving also maybe to investors that your market and how it works. Can you expand a little bit on how you're doing that?
Always, I think it's really, really important to have the interactions with the market. And we just came from an expo last week with our actual customer segments and customer groups, and it's been really, really interesting seeing the feedback there, and actually getting a lot of leads to follow up on further on. So I think our biggest challenge right now will actually be if we can actually supply that demand that we can see in the market, because we can see the feedback from all the various stakeholders that it's really, really, really something they crave, I would say. But it's also tricky because it's about focus. We actually had a case with CBS, students from CBS, where they were actually trying to help us navigate all the choices we have right now. Should it be municipalities? Should it be algae at zoos? Or should it be snow at business parks? Where is actually the golden combination of first adopters, customer segments, who has the easiest challenge to solve? And I don't think we're there yet. And I don't think you ever will be. I think it's really important to keep on exploring and experimenting and finding the golden pathway.
Mm-hmm. And you also found, I know, a very simple way of validating whether or not early adopters would pay your the price that you think this is that they're going to have to pay when the product is completely done.
Absolutely. The very, very first prototypes we made were just completely proof of concept. So they are by nature just a remote control toy. They are a really fun remote control toy, but it is just a remote control RC controller that you walk along the robot and control it around. And we actually used that for a lot of experimentation, but we came to the realization that since we are doing the experimentation on paid area, we are actually doing the service, so we might as well test whether or not we can earn money off that at the price point we were saying. At the same time. Now, it goes without saying that since a person has to go around remote controlling that, we're spending a lot more hours than what is the end product going to be. But it was a great way to actually earn money straight away at the price point we were marketing with just our experimentation, because we would do those anyway. Might as well earn a little bit on the side.
Yeah, so just to be clear, so you were charging some of your potential customers for the service of...
not even potential, they are customers. We are charging them.
So you have customers?
But the product is not done yet. No, it's not a valid business case from our point of view, because we're burning too many hours on it, because it's not an autonomous robot yet. This one will be, so then it will be really different.
But that validates, I think, without any question, when you're talking to people, like, will it work? Will people want to pay that price and stuff like that? You can say, for sure.
Absolutely. And it's been really fun going around to the various customer segments and asking them, and then trying to push the price up a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. I always learned that you have to push it up to the point where they complain, but still pay. And that's actually really fun to see in the dialogue you have with them. And then what should this be a month? It should be 5,000, it should be 6,000, it should be 7,000. And then at some point you can see some of the customers, the tone really shifts. And that was we hit a point there. Right. So that was a fun experiment.
Can we circle a little bit back to what you were talking about in the beginning and the early phase market segmentation? Because you did a lot of work there. Could you tell how you very specifically did that? How did you? What kind of tools did you use? And
it was absolutely just cold emailing, going at info at the theme park 1 and info at theme park 2, and measuring the response rate of that. Whenever there was someone responding to it, following up, going to their premise, actually having an interview interview with them, noting down a lot of questions on specifically showcasing the prototype and have a discussion about that, but also very crucially walking around the premise and looking at the various ways they were handling the situation right now, and what kind of benefits they might see in a solution like this. A key benefit we could discover is that it's really critical for the theme parks or the attractions in general that this is a product that could operate at night. So a really important feature for us to develop something like that.
And what was in the emails? Like was it a sales offer? Or
No, it was basically just, would you find a product like this interesting?
Right.
And obviously, if you don't respond, then you don't find it interesting. But if you do respond, well, there's a little interest there, and then you can always follow up with that. Like, what is that interest? Actually, do you see this use case? And then specifically when you meet people and you have a nice chat with them, you can get a lot more information out of them, especially when taking the time to do a walk and talk around the premise. You can really get a lot of information that is just casually coming out of them in a really good way.
And you track the feedback ratio, or what we call we can call it in each of the segments?
Yeah, absolutely. That's also why we could see that like half the zoos actually respond, so a conversion rate of 50% from a correct email is just completely out of the roof.
Yeah.
So there was really obvious that theme parks and zoos, that's where we need to focus the majority of our attention.
Yeah. And going from, I suppose this is sort of like first markets, and have you considerations for market validation for future markets, or the combination of future product updates and future markets, and what are you handling this now?
Yeah, so what's going to be really interesting is it better to venture into other customer segments, or is it better to stay better financially, or is it easier, or is there a bigger volume there, or is it better to stick with the initial early adopter market segment, but in different geographies, so expanding to other countries? Like these are some really interesting considerations to do now, because we can see there are a lot of interest from a lot of various customer segments. Could also be through distributors. That's also very interesting. So we're really testing a lot with the various customer segments now. How can we actually scale this business the most efficient way going forward?
And how are you then doing that now?
So again, a lot of feedback, a lot of discussions. Our board of directors are really working a lot on trying to strategize what sales channels should we focus on in the beginning, and which ones will we push a little bit further out. So especially the ones that have experience with scaling towards export knows the hurdles in that, and I don't. So I really listen a lot to the various mentors we have, but also the very fortunate board of directors I have.
Yeah. And board of directors is it seems like that they are active in market validation.
They are active in all of their various segments. They are specifically handpicked because of their absolute astonishing skills within all the business segments. So that could be product development, but that's also financial, capital security. That is also sales and business development. So it's been a big help to actually get a very professional board of directors aboard.
So picking, like I suppose that was picked by you, but picking a board of directors or maybe advisors in general, that was part of your market validation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way to build a company and a product this complex alone. Absolutely no way. And you really need some good experience to come along. Being part of the incubator here is absolutely brilliant from a technical point of view, and to a certain extent also a commercial point of view in the robotics segment. But we are making a slightly different product compared to a lot of the other previous robotics companies. So the general interactions with customers in the market is also really valuable. And that's why the board of directors is really supporting a lot. And they are specifically handpicked because this is not just a meet 2 times a year, give me a lot of tasks. I can find tasks on my own very easily. So it has to be someone who can also help carrying the load, and they really are. So that's absolutely excellent.
And how did you then do this? Are there some insights, like what did you look for? And
that was actually again, being out in the market, this is not so much the customer market, but more the startup market. And then really enjoying a lot. We've been through just about any accelerator by now, it seems. But you never know what comes out of it. And we got our chair of the board for one of the accelerators, really excellent. We were part of another network to get actually a huge amount of interest in joining a board. So it was actually to a point where I had to have 15 candidates, putting them up on a whiteboard and segmenting them out based on their experience and what kind of competence that would complement the others. So it was really a selection process and some absolutely perfect and brilliant minds that unfortunately could not fill the spot because we could not have a board of 10 people, obviously.
And also to make sure that they didn't have similar competencies and
to really match them up so everything would be complementing against each other, but also from a personal level, like the chemistry, how well is that personality gonna fit with the other personalities, and very crucially making sure that there are various competencies that would complement each other. That was a key objective.
And you also talk to a lot of other startups, obviously, and both some that are like kind of like at your development stage and later stages. But when talking to companies that are at an earlier stage, or maybe it's not even a company yet, be it's a founder trying to validate a concept or an idea, what advice would you give to such a person?
Share your ideas. Share. I mean, go out, talk to people. You cannot build something like this alone. Absolutely not. And if you try to build it in your own garage by yourself until you're ready to hit the market, then the market is going to hit you like a brick. There's absolutely no better way than testing anything than getting it out in the real world. You cannot develop something like this in a lab. And sure, there's a risk that someone else copies what you're doing. But in all fairness, the risk completely pales in the comparison to what kind of benefits and help you can get by sharing your ideas. And the vast majority just really want to help instead of trying to copy what you're doing. That is so rare to see that. So share your ideas, go out, talk to people, get acquainted with networks, really just have a lot of discussions, a lot of cup of coffees with a lot of people. That's the best way.
Yeah. And don't be too concerned about intellectual property rights or NDAs.
No. I mean, if someone wants to copy it, they will copy it anyway. I mean, might as well just share your ideas with some fun people and have some really great conversations. The vast majority of companies, they do what they do best. And that is not to copy what others do. That is what to stick to the core activities. So there's not really a lot of companies seeking out to copy other companies. But I mean, if you have some really crucial idea, then don't share that.
Yeah. Find ways of sharing without sharing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Alf. That was super inspiring and great to hear about your journey and how you actually work very systematically with market validation, both in early stages and that you're still doing that. Yeah, how you're doing it. Thanks a lot. We will then turn to Q&A and bring back Michael. For you, Michael, so does solid market validation increase a startup's chances of attracting early-stage investors?
Yeah. Investors, they like data. And if you can go out and say, I talked to 20 people, 12 of them thought it was a really good idea. 6 of them hired me to do an experiment, like you said, where I walked around and I did the sweeping and they paid this much money. The investment risk is just reduced significantly. So if there's one thing we like, it's actually data. And that's real data created on real customer segments.
Yeah. And Alf, did you define the specific metrics that indicated your market relevance? Did you do that in when you got going originally?
Yeah, I would say so. We try to figure out what kind of pain points the various customers would have, and then trying to map them up against the various customer segments, and then testing out that hypothesis. What is actually the most valuable solution and problem that the customers have? And we're still doing it, but we're also started out. Yeah.
And Michael, I'll go back to you with a little bit of a detailed question about the value proposition canvas. So what is your take on the weight between functional, emotional, and social needs when you are building your value proposition canvas?
It's a very good question. It's very detailed.
Yeah.
So when you talk about jobs to be done, we divide those jobs into functional jobs, social jobs, and stuff. And I think, of course, what we do most is focus on the functional job, but we forget about the social jobs. So, for example, if you have a Swiss watch, I'm pretty sure you don't buy the Swiss watch because you want accuracy in your time telling. You buy it because you want to show off that I have the money, I have the style, I have the class to carry a Swiss watch. So that depends on the segment. In segments of Swiss watches, it means everything.
Yeah.
If you're building a process plant, you want it to work functionally.
Yeah.
So,
and in robotics?
In robotics, I think it's actually a mixture because you want to work functionally, but you also want to show that you are environmentally safe, that you are taking good care of your employees so they don't get hurt and they do the dirty job. So it's a good mix. But I like the question. Thank you to the one who wrote it.
Thank you. Looking back, Michael, this is also for you. Looking back in your work with startups, I don't know if you want to answer this question, but let's see. Who would you say is the best case to work with in terms of market validation and market exploration? What made them stand out? Maybe you can say that much at least.
To work with as a company?
As a case, yeah.
So I can tell you a case which I think is fun.
Yeah.
It's actually a case that I rejected very early. I was at a workshop in 2010 with a guy who wanted to found a company, and he had an idea for software that teachers could use to test their students more casually. And we mapped out the business model, and he asked me if I wanted to be part of it, and I said no, because there's no money in education. I don't believe in it. But go ahead, and he got some funding from the Norwegian state and started working on it. And he came back, and we talked about how he could test in different ways. And then go back 2 years, I got an email from him that now I have sold Kahoot for $1.5 billion. And you were right. There was no money in education, but there was money in Fortune 500. They like to use it as internal training tool. So seeing that journey where he started very much focused on education and training in the classroom was still used a lot. But transferring into training and HR, and that becoming the big driver of the business was just amazing.
Yeah. And I suppose that you mentioned this also because that is a case where they did market validation in a
very structured way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kept investigating new segments, testing, like you said, trying out new value propositions and stuff until they found the gold mine, which was the Fortune 500.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to say that entrepreneurship is not a sprint. It's a marathon. I don't know any companies at the age of less than 8 years that has really, maybe one, Mia. But other than that, I don't know any who has done it very quickly. So it's accepting that this is a sprint, that it'll take a long time. You have to make a lot of mistakes, and the model you have in the beginning is not going to be the model that you will have in the end.
Yeah.
And I like Kahoot as a very good example of that.
Yeah. And Michael, this is also a question here. You listened to Alf's story. So is there something, do you have some takeaways, maybe even some advice to companies, maybe for Alf, maybe in a similar stage?
I think brilliant input, and I like the way you were testing, but I think one of your most important points is not being afraid of sharing. I hear it as a big barrier to testing is that, I lose my IP, I'll tell about my idea, and you're right. It's this very, very small risk compared to the upside. So I think that's a brilliant take on it, and just keep doing that, getting out there. I also like the way you were testing with the remote very early. We have that test described in our handbook. It's called Concierge, where you actually test the value proposition, but not building the apparatus to actually deliver it. So just keep that creativity that you use in developing, also use it in your ways of testing. And I think you're already doing that, so well done.
And maybe to add on that as a question, so how do you balance the pressure of scaling quickly? Maybe also, I think you now you also have investors on board on the one hand, and then balancing that with the need to validate.
So what we're doing right now is building 5 prototypes to validating that jump, and the ambition is to build 5 prototypes on top of that, so not scaling excessively fast. But I can really feel it in my fingers that I really just want to push out a lot of robots. But fortunately, I have a lot of good experienced mentors here who have done it before, but also the board that really knows it has to work before you scale, because you're just going to scale your problems. You're not going to scale a good solution.
Yeah.
And it's really, I know I have to restrain myself. Unfortunately, I have a lot of people helping me with that, because it's just really crippling in me that I just really want to get it out there.
Yeah.
But that is not the way to do it. That is the sure way to destroy your company.
Yeah, agreed. Very much.
I actually have an excellent example of exactly that. So in 2017, I was surfing on Kickstarter. And on Kickstarter, I found this weight that would have a 3D arm. So it would do a 3D picture of you on your weight. And then you could see how you develop, where you get stronger, smaller, and so on and so forth. And I thought I'd fund it. And I even talked to the founders. I mean, they got funding right away. It was a great idea. So they had desirability. They had the viability. They knew people would pay, because they paid up front, and they paid actually relatively high prices. And they knew it could be done, but they scaled way too early. So actually, it has taken them from 2018 until actually using my UPS tracker, I should get it tomorrow.
Oh,
so that's actually 8 years on its way.
Yeah,
and that's all because they scaled too quickly, and they didn't have everything in the right place. So they had to go back. So you go out, you start building, then you have to do takebacks, then you have to start over again. So it's just incredibly expensive to do that. So good decisions.
yeah, I very much agreed. Michael, specifically for companies or startups coming out of university, there's a question for that. I suppose, each university probably does this a little bit different, but in general, do you think that there is enough focus within the educational system on market validation?
No.
Yeah.
And I think it's getting better. But in all fairness, you also have to look at when did the tools came out. So the business model canvas is 12, 15 years old now. Value proposition, relatively new. Lean startup, 10 years old. And the professor teaching, they have to learn these things themselves, get experience before they can start teaching the students. But I think one thing we have to understand, and this is a skill, a profession, which is part of entrepreneurship, that we really have to focus more on in the educational system. Because being able to build is not the only thing you need in order to be a successful entrepreneur.
No.
So.
And let's say you were then out of your university, or fairly freshly out of university, maybe you didn't kind of get, let's just say, enough of introduction into market validation. Yeah. How can you then, as a private individual, maybe a young student, not in a job, not able to, access a lot of resources, but how can you then try to educate yourself about market validation?
I think the good thing now is that there's a lot online for free.
Yeah.
So actually, somebody like some of the accelerators have created content which is online. We have somebody called the Kaufmann Foundation in Germany. They have taken all the Strategyzer content and paid for it to be online and freely available. So I think there's a lot of content online. But I think it's also important to be part of a group where you can talk and discuss. And you'll find that in a lot of accelerators are quite open to actually inviting people in, also without commitments and investments at early stage.
So Kaufmann Foundation, I think you can Google that. Yeah. So that would be one thing. And then you mentioned getting into contact with like-minded, I think. Yeah. So find someone in your street or
forums. People who have done it before, exactly like you have done. Places like this is amazing. You meet people and you get inspired. And online forums also.
Yeah.
There's a lot of online forums where you can investigate on.
Right. And that could be a first place for start sharing,
exactly
like I've mentioned.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
and there is this intuitive thing that people want each other to actually be successful in entrepreneurship. I mean, you will find that people are really helpful not only within each other, but also if you reach out. I think it's very rare that even high-level CEOs or researchers and academics say, no, I don't want to talk to you. Because it's really rare.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You experienced that as well, Alf?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was visiting a company and I didn't research it enough. So as I was leaving the company, I figured I was actually talking to the CEO. I was really, really surprised about that. It was a nice conversation, but the fact that he had the time to even talk to me was really amazing.
Yeah.
So lessons learned, do your homework.
Yeah. One thing, but also another lesson was don't be afraid to reach out.
Absolutely.
To peers or contact persons that you think might be have valuable insights. Yeah. And how did you do that?
But that could be anything again. Trying to reach out, going through networks, going through contacts.
Yeah.
Being exposed also means that sometimes they find me. So being at expos, being being in magazines or articles online, just kind of gets a snowball rolling. And when you hit a critical mass, it just keeps on rolling. And then once in a while, we get an email from various really, really interesting people who just saw us online. I actually had a case with someone who couldn't find a product like this online, but found it through ChatGPT. So really, so we are there as well, apparently.
Yeah. Also, a very specific question here for you, Alf. So how do you view interns and student assistants in relating to helping your startups, or maybe?
I use it all the time, and it's so underrated. I think it's really, really valuable, especially if you can get someone who are passionate about this field, then they're really, really driven to it. And with the tools we have online now, especially AI, means that interns and really, really students, early people in the industry can, have a superpower now. Sure, there might be 1 out of 10 times a wrong answer through ChatGPT, but you could get so much done so much quicker. So we have both interns and student workers all the time. Absolutely, and I will continue to do that. It's the absolute best to drive up the entire industry and being part of that. I really, really enjoy that we actually are in a position where we can help someone start their career. It's really excellent.
Yeah. Jumping a little bit, we get tons of different, thank you for all of the questions. We get tons of different topics. Jumping a little bit, still staying with you, Alf. What is the next step? We were discussing it a little bit, but maybe if you can elaborate, what is the next steps for the market validation for you?
Yeah, so right now we're building these 5 prototypes, and they need to go out to customers and as many customers as possible. The first 2 here in our backyards to make sure that they are stable enough and we have them to a certain extent so reliable that we can send out further, and then as many customer statements as possible. In the parallel to this, we're also fundraising in order to actually take the next step. And doing that in few minor steps. So as I mentioned, instead of just going straight for 50 prototypes more, then going 5 and then 10 and then 10 more. So iterating in small batches, that is the next step. But as mentioned, we are in a point right now where we need to fundraise because money doesn't grow on trees.
No. And did you also do metrics for those 5 units that you're building now, or for the testing of them? Or
it's really, really important to come up with some good results with those. So we have a lot of different KPIs that we actually want to measure on, and also getting those KPIs to the various customers to figure out, do they prefer to have the metrics by square meter or by hour usage, or how would they actually like to pay? How do they prefer to see the results? It is by volume of collected trash. If that is the case, then we need to collect the trash. So getting some metrics on how the business models will operate further on is going to be really critical to take to the investors, saying this is the roadmap ahead. So it's absolutely vital for us to get these next 5 prototypes out into the real world and performing.
Yeah. And these metrics, you already made them, I suppose, or are you making them as you go along?
We are making everything as we go along. So we made some. We have some ideas first. We have some ideas, as you can hear. But so anytime we talk to a new interesting person, and then, that was a really, really good idea, let's also test that or put it on in the basket of ideas to pick up later.
Let me try and push you a little bit with it. Maybe I wouldn't say nasty, but a tricky question. But I'll give it for Michael. Is there also a risk that you can stay in this going back loop for too long?
I think you will have a lot of people on your side who will make you move forward, investors, boards. So there will be an internal drive. Of course, there's a risk that you get stuck. That you don't see the next step, and maybe the next step is not there. And then, 95% of the startups, they will die. So why not die early instead of die late? Before you spend all your money, so you have the money and finances and the resources to start over on a new idea. So if there's no progress, it's a sign that this is not it.
But we emphasize doing market validation a lot today. But is there, maybe just to stay a little bit with this topic, but is there a point where you now know that enough is enough, or go to next step, or what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I have those three things. That do people want it? If you really have valid data that people want it, then you should move on. If you don't, you have to keep going. And if you can't reach that data point, then you shouldn't go on. You should stop. If you have valid data that you can build it and you're the right one to build it, do it. If you can't find out how to build it and make it plausible that you can scale it, don't move on. And if you can't get plausible data that this is going to be a good business and financially sound, there's not enough money for everybody, you have to stop working on it and give up. And I think this is probably one of the most difficult decisions, and that's where the board and people on your side have to help you to say, we tried, we did it, let's take a hit now and move on something which is more interesting.
So the baby you mentioned, sometimes you need to...
My baby was not pretty enough.
I
have to kill it.
Kill your darling.
Actually, I've together with... I worked a lot for defense in the UK, and we couldn't call it a failure. So we called it successfully retire an idea. So that now we have tested it in every single way, and we know that it does not work. And then we are successfully retiring the idea. Because not because we haven't done the testing, but because it just doesn't work. And then we stop it there. And actually, I think it's one of the biggest problems we have in large corporates is that there's always somebody who has a heart beating for that baby. So it keeps popping up at different occasions and hackathons, and you don't really successfully retire and kill them. One thing, if I can just add today, is that we talk a lot about how we can just reach out and talk to people. But if I look at the biggest barrier to market validation, it's actually that people don't like to reach out. There's this thing, it's like reaching out in a nightclub to a girl you don't know, get rejected, and you have that same rejection. I want to talk to my baby. I really love my project. What if he tells me that it's ugly? What if he tells me I don't want to talk to you because you're not interesting for me? And if I look in both in entrepreneurship, but also in corporate innovation, I think that is actually the biggest blocker. We don't have the nerve to actually reach out, to have that conversation. And that's something to work on and talk to people about, and also to have role plays. How do I have those first discussions? And how do I take criticism in and use it positively? So
maybe something to practice in the group of people that you then try to meet.
Exactly.
Very, very, very good point. So try and be brave is a stepping stone for market validation as well.
Definitely.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to thank you all for all of your very good and excellent questions, and difficult and insightful questions. This is it for today's sessions, and I also want to thank both of you, Mikael and Al, for joining us and sharing your insights and experiences. It's been super, super interesting. I also hope that you there behind your screens found this episode of our talk show interesting and valuable, and that it gave you concrete and specific insights for how you can do market validation. And until then, and until next time, stay curious, test your assumption, and keep building the future. Thank you.